I call the meeting to order.
Meeting's been posted according to open meeting laws.
Roll call.
President Seeger.
Here.
Trustee Alexander.
Here.
Trustee Nugent. Here. Trustee Johnson. Here. Trustee Renucci.
Here.
Trustee Smalley.
Here.
Trustee Wisniewski.
All right, citizen participation per Village Resolution 2017-01. Anyone wishing to address the Village Board during citizen participation will be allowed 5 minutes. Your subject can be anything, whether on the agenda or not. The Village Board should not engage in a discussion regarding comments because it was not part of a publicly noticed agenda. Upon conclusion of the citizen participation segment, members of the audience are not allowed further comment unless they are participating in a public hearing or specifically allowed by a majority vote due to the involvement in the agenda item. That being said, would anybody like to speak during citizen participation? Would you like to speak during citizen participation? No, Mary? All right, with that, I'll close citizen participation and move on to consent agenda. One motion and a second will approve all the items. Any item may be pulled on the list and voted on separately.
Move to approve the consent agenda. And I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, on to miscellaneous business. Consideration of awarding bid for Well 7 maintenance project. Now, everybody's read Jason's memo. Does anybody have any questions regarding Well 7?
Motion to approve proposal from Mid-City for $28,640.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Consideration of airport layout plan. Questions on the layout plan for the airport?
Yes, I have one. When in looking at the diagram, I noticed adding sewer and water.
Yeah, so that's something I added. Matt and I had a conversation with the Airport Advisory Committee about the ALP last 2 weeks ago, and they came back with some great feedback. Obviously, we're looking to add some hangars. And one of the things that I thought I would present to you guys to see if you're interested is the potential to run sewer and water to the airport. Now, the utilities would have to pay for sewer and water to get it to the airport, which currently that's at Highway L and Highway 20. There was provisions for future extensions to the airport. But then once the sewer and water are to the airfield, it is something that is eligible to be a shared cost with the BOA, with federal dollars, if that's something we're wanting to do. But it has to be on the ALP in order for it to be eligible.
Would there be a hookup fee for the individual hangars, just like there is for a home?
I believe you would cover that the same way our existing rates currently cover, residential or commercial developments. So that's something I wanted you guys to take a look at to see if you had any input on that. Keep in mind, as we do more hangar expansions, the more hangars you get out there, the harder it will be to add sewer and water later. It really is something that, and maybe it was looked at last time, the last phase of hangars, I'm not sure, but I think it's something we need to take a good hard look at before we develop more hangar sites.
Just going to highlight the other one change that we made was planning for an extension of the runway by 100. Insurance standpoint for pilots and aircraft coming in.
Gives us a little more visibility too. The possible entrance on the south end, is that basically the same as for the farming right now? Is that the same location?
I think it would have to be to be determined. I mean, so first of all, the state's going to want to have a say about it because it's the state highway. And then really it depends on kind of how those hangar areas plan out and where it makes the most sense, because I'm sure we're only going to get one entrance, so it will have to be able to facilitate both those areas. The other thing you'll see on there is the SRE building, that's the snow removal equipment building, and a potential new terminal. That's been something that's been discussed, in recent years.
And once again, this doesn't commit us to anything, of course. This is just a plan, because if it's not in the plan, we can't even ask for it.
That is correct. And we have to update this plan every so often. Our current ALP is, from '98, so it's definitely past due to update it. The other thing that I had a conversation with BOA about is the potential for any land acquisition, and there's some property adjacent there that is in the red border, that may be possible as well. But again, it would need to be something that's shown on the ALP if it's something we were to ever pursue.
We need a motion then to approve the ALP as presented?
I think that's appropriate. And then if anybody else has any other thoughts on anything they'd like to see, added or removed.
If not, then I'll move to accept the airport layout plan as presented.
Second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Consideration of the LED streetlight upgrades. Any questions for Jason on the upgrades to the streetlights?
Are any of these new poles, or is this just replacing existing?
That is all existing poles. And 40 actually pointed out to me today a couple of the ones that We Energies has. We Energies created this map. This is what they'd like to see as Phase 1B. And 40 pointed out to me today that a couple of these already are converted to LEDs, so obviously they're not going to replace an LED with an LED, so they would just go on to an additional fixture. And keep in mind, too, this is a project we were phasing out over 4 years, so this is Phase 1.
Motion to approve Phase 1 of the LED streetlight upgrade project.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to the consideration of Village Square landscaping plans. I'm sure we've got some input on that one. Any questions?
Just an FYI, a letter was sent out to all the business and property owners around the square.
In my,
Just say a few of them are very appreciative of getting that.
it looks good.
I did not get any feedback, though, just so the board's aware.
And that,
Will it survive the winter?
Yeah, so, the plants and trees that were selected were obviously with the conditions in mind. The other thing you have to remember, too, is we're gonna irrigate this, so it's going to get watered, which is a key factor in its survival in that environment.
is that what the blue pipes are?
Yep,
They're coming out of
currently,
the ground
yes,
again.
those are the blue pipes sticking out of the ground.
Jason, you want to touch on that one item I asked about?
Please refresh my memory.
Visibility.
Okay, so, and again, we've selected trees with upright canopies, and it's gonna be a maintenance factor. So as these trees go in, they're gonna be roughly the size of what you're seeing in the renderings there. And we're going to have to, as those trees grow, we're gonna have to keep them trimmed up, you know, obviously, so that they don't become a visibility issue. We're gonna have to make sure that as we're putting the trees in, we're looking at visibility, line of sight, and signs and things like that. And we're gonna have to adjust the signs that are currently there. But we think we can make it all work together. I took a little different approach on this project where, it's a combination DPW/contracted services project. And I think we'll have a little more control, not only over plant selection, but timelines. And if we get a little cooperation from Mother Nature, we should be able to have this done by Memorial Day.
So is the village arborist?
Forester, I'd like to
Forester,
make it
excuse me. Use the proper title. I saw ginkgo and I was like, okay, as long as we're not planting the female version.
That is something I learned about through this process. We do not want to plant the female version because that puts off an odor, and obviously we don't want that.
Jason, you don't need a motion on this, right? This is just simply coming to plans. We've already approved the expenditure on this?
Any direction or anything from the board at all. Other than that, if there's nothing, I'm comfortable with moving forward.
Oh, looks good, yeah.
All right, consideration of recommendation from the CDA to designate a portion of ARPA funds for tourism and marketing purposes. So this was a long process, but Vanessa has come up with some really good ideas, and at the CDA meeting, we had made a choice to spend some dollars on marketing to help the businesses in the community. Instead of trying to just solicit each business, we figured let's do a big helping hand and advertise that they exist, all of them. So that's where this idea came from.
Want a motion? Make a motion to approve designation of ARPA funds to the CDA for the purpose of sponsoring a billboard May through October.
Second that.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Discussion and consideration of liquidated damages for 2021 Main Street, Church Street Square reconstruction project. Jason?
So we talked about this a couple meetings ago, and the direction from the board at the time was finish the project, come back, and we'll talk about liquidated damages. County would like to close this thing out. We're getting close to being able to do that. You all have a memo in front of you from Tim today, and that reflects project costs to date. And what do we got outstanding yet, Tim? Rough numbers?
Outstanding as far as,
Restoration.
Yeah, restoration is the last remaining item that we don't really have quantified because it hasn't been completed yet. So it hasn't been measured or completed. But even that, if you just look at the restoration number on the project, the village portion of that in total was $12,000 or approximately.
So it's a pretty small number.
So even that, and we've already paid 10. So there's not a huge dollar amount outstanding other than what you see in front of you.
We have negotiated through all the quantity concerns, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's reflected in the table before you. So county wants to get this thing closed out so they can apply for the grant, which, as you remember, the grant is for $1 million, and then when they get paid, then we can get paid from the county, our $750,000. So it's in our best interest to figure out what we're thinking on liquidated damages.
Have all our repairs been done?
So we've got some restoration to do yet. We've got some punch list stuff to do yet. There's some striping that has to be finished. Still a question about the paving, the driving lanes on the square. Tim, you had a conversation with county, you said today?
Yeah, so I called Joe Kroll at the county and just said, hey, you know, the pavement is a county item, it's not a village item. I know that a number of us aren't exactly happy with the ride quality in the square, and suggested maybe we can have the contractor bring out a measuring device, which is essentially a 10-foot straight edge to measure how much of a dip there is that we're talking about. Joe is going to kick it around and get back to us. But again, we're not driving that process. It's really a county-driven process. But as far as potentially big outstanding items, that's really the big one. I mean, the other items have mostly been addressed.
So they did address the concrete situation last week. 2 weeks ago, they removed and replaced all the sections of cracked concrete, and they put up no fight to do that. So I really thought that was going to be a negotiation process, but they stood behind it and addressed it all to our specification.
What about the signage and everything that was discussed earlier?
So the handicap signage is yet to go up. Those signs have been ordered, and the contractor's been given the green light to do it. They're waiting on the signs.
The concrete that they pulled out, does that also include the ones that were, that had dips where we had ponding of water?
Correct. There was some that had low spots in it, and then the rest of it was cracked.
There's some other still work to do. There's some of the manholes they have to come back and adjust. We've not gotten a schedule from them on that yet. If you look and you hit some of the drives, some of the manholes are set out of specification. They're lower than they're supposed to be. And, so there's, those they still have to address as well. So there's some things out there. We're, I guess the word I would say, cautiously optimistic that they'll complete by the May 16th deadline, although that's not a foregone conclusion at this point.
I get wanting to get the grant in, but especially, I mean, you know, May 2nd, I mean, we've got an event on the square this Friday, we've got a parade on the 30th. What's the county's opinion on the?
I'm not exactly sure what their stance is on it. I do know that they're looking to us. Their thinking is that really the liquidated damages are gonna be for the village to decide, because their portion of the project, and it was so, you know, much smaller than ours, that I think they're gonna just let us drive on this one.
Yeah, and the exceedance in time was really on the village portion of the work, whereas all the other items were, the county items were mostly finished. I mean, except for the paving, which is right at the end, but.
Is the 43 days, is that up to today?
It was suspended for winter, so that was up through the point they got the railing done, which I think was in January. However, that May 16th date is the day that the liquidated damages would resume, if they are not complete.
So if we approved something this evening, would we be able to respond to that if they missed the 6th? Or are we stopping the clock permanently?
I would, any type of recommendation would come out, I would recommend not saying that you're not going to take into account additional exceedances.
And I guess here's the thing, if the board's not comfortable making a decision on this yet, then I think as long as you're prepared that there'll likely be a special meeting once we get to the point where, if you say to us, bring this back when we are done, then I think what happens is that's what we go back to county with and say, that's what the board asked for. Then, as soon as we hit that finish point, then we're gonna, if it doesn't line with a meeting, we may need to pull a meeting together just to get the ball rolling on closing out.
Jason, I think that everything kind of lines up here. You know, we're talking about a completion or substantial completion of this whole thing by the 16th. Our next meeting is on the 16th. It's to not make a decision until the 16th. We tabled this until the 16th. When that completion point is upon us.
Make a motion to table this till the 16th.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, consideration and direction to staff regarding boardroom equipment and furnishing updates. Lion's share of this meeting packet. Before Eileen runs through the whole memo on us, we've all read the memo, right? Okay. Do we have specific questions? That's where I'd like to start fielding this.
I guess what I'm concerned about mostly is, what are the real prerequisites for everything here? So what is the proper order to do this in? Because it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to do it all at once, right? So how should this be phased?
Well, and that was what brought me to come to the board with this enormous amount of information, is because really what you decide to do with the desk area drives the decision on flexible space. You want things around a wireless mic system. So, if that does not matter and we want a stationary area, or maybe just keep what we have, then a wired mic system is more cost effective and probably the way to go. So that's why I got to the point where I was like, I kind of need to go to the board just to get the direction. I know we need new chairs, and that's, more pressing than probably anything, so I'd say the chairs would be the first thing I'd recommend. Mic systems are working internally. We have no problems internally. It's the external broadcast that is cutting out because of this device that connects to the phone system. And we are able to use the camera we have. Of course, audience doesn't really get a view of who's speaking, but it works. It still provides transparency. So it's really, what does the board want?
So I guess a couple of things. We just put this in for the county, Milwaukee County, for their supervisor meeting. And yeah, some of the wired versus wireless was a discussion, but they have a custom of when you're speaking, you stand to speak. So in one of our rooms, it was designed to be a committee room, but it then became a room as a backup room for the main board meetings. And so then, we gotta have wireless, 'cause we gotta stand up. So I think you have to think through, are we ever gonna have, and I don't think we have had a need for anything beyond what we have here in the podium for citizen participation or somebody presenting that. So for $20,000, I couldn't think of a reason why we couldn't just deal with a wired mic a second podium or something. We had multiple people presenting.
I think I'm on the exact opposite end of that. Reasons of what this room can. If we do utilize it to its fullest capacity, it's not just this body of people standing here making decisions. It's more. It is our avenue for voting, and it's a challenge to try and move or navigate around this desk area here. And if we had something like the desks that are presented by Eileen, that is something more mobile, then it becomes a better use of the space, and the idea of wireless is almost essential to utilize the room. I think that's more along the lines that I was thinking of the full use of the room, not just thinking about these meetings.
I like the idea of having movable desks, something that can be reconfigured ad hoc for a lot of reasons. I mean, this monstrosity, if I can be nice, really restricts us in a lot of ways with regard to what we can use this room. And we've unless we're willing to really look at other spaces in this building to change, I think we ought to try to make this room as multi-purpose as possible. The only way we can do that is that drives the decision for them, which I'm sure it does. Especially, like you talk about voting. We're not getting any smaller, we're getting larger. We may have more elections in the future, depending on how things turn out. And yeah, it would be nice to just simply be able to move things around, organize them the way you want to have.
I think the other part of it too, with the idea of mobilization, the different desks, I don't necessarily think that we should be locking ourselves into a $45,000 desk. That was crazy. I think we've got some extremely talented DPW employees that may help us figure some things out. And it may be a better avenue to look at that, and they can maybe come up with some creative ideas by looking at some of the information that Eileen has, with different casters to make them mobile. But I think that we need to use this room better than we do now.
We do need to have some sort of power option, even if it's from something. iPads and whatnot in meetings and thinking about other uses. And then, the cable management, people can't see back here, but there's cables that's been out there, just hazards and things like that. Having attended a few meetings where I'm the only trustee electronically, it is difficult to interact and hear everybody, so I think figuring out the camera system so that people can see the face of who's talking. And then the other thing I was going to ask that we maybe a quote on it too is me in there as well, because we do have meetings in there. And there's soundbar and camera options that's not as complex as something like this, but, yeah.
TI quote did include that.
Oh, I missed that.
There was about $1,800 for a Logitech device. At this point, they were proposing just adding it on, I have a TV on a cart, and adding it to that, and you could just move that in there when you needed it. Yeah, and that way it could be used in any meeting room in the village if you needed it.
Okay, sorry, I missed, I saw the meeting room in a cart, but I missed the meeting room. So I think the other thing we'll have to work through too is when they put the timeline out of this room for.
Decided that, incredible that we have such a large audience tonight. They don't necessarily have to look at doors behind our back. Maybe they could be looking at that wall. That wouldn't, interrupt any meetings. That end. Would get a little irritated with me because of, but I'm sure we could change that.
Maybe just rotate it. The thing is, like, a decision like that, where we want the desks needs to be made before any camera system is installed. Because even though the desks are mobile, we will mark where the desks are placed because those cameras will be set to focus on certain areas. So that when there's an active mic, it can focus on a, segment of 3 people or something like that. So those decisions we'll have to make before we finalize things.
What I'll do then is just start with the chairs. I have, 5 different style chairs in this room right now. Maybe we just start with the consistency of chairs. In time, maybe Doug can work on some drawings of desks.
I don't know if DPW staff has time for that project. I did mention that in my memo. So, Jason, I put it in my memo.
I know it was in there. Okay. Jason will find time.
So for chairs, I really like the vinyl with the mesh back combination. It's easy to clean up in case something happens. Mesh back is comfortable, when things get heated. No. And I thank you very much. And I just think it makes the most sense in the long run for usability.
I agree, John. And I ordered a lot of ergonomic chairs, and that's the one I was going to recommend too.
The web chair?
The web chair.
Yeah.
The $127 one, is that the one we're talking?
$195.
Okay, so I think that's direction on that. Is the board comfortable with moving forward with that purchase? We didn't specifically budget for that item this year. We could take it from ARPA to municipal building fund balance. And then I just want a little bit of direction back to the AV system, just because those quotes I am receiving are only good for a certain amount of time. So we want to figure out the boardroom and then revisit the AV quotes.
So lead time on a lot of this stuff is really long. They tried to delay us for something, and I was like, well, I can find it. It's more. So, I would like to see what we could have. I mean, I guess I'd go back to CTI and be like, how varied would this be? I mean, the placement and the wiring is one thing, to wire it all up. But the number of devices and things like that should be fairly static. It shouldn't matter how the layout is. So I would worry about getting the devices, and then we'll figure. If we need 2 or 3 more based on the design, well, then we're out 2 or 3 until.
Correct. I think the only thing it would affect in that quote is labor. The only other component I can think of is under this desk, there are 2 speakers. So we have 2 speakers here, and then we have 2 speakers under this desk. So if we go to a mobile configuration, we'll probably have That might be an added,
I agree with Matt, lead time's not right now.
So, I mean, I would go ahead and go with that. I would then, if in the next few weeks, what we can come up with, out. Folding tables and just.
I just want to make sure that we're able to see each other, you know, that this is kind of a bag. I don't like looking through two mics and a water bottle to see Matt, or Mary is even harder to see, you know, that sort of. You gotta be able, no, it's her water bottle, it's not yours. It's the Yeti in the way. No, I'm just kidding. It's all right. But, yeah, but, you know, that we need to be able to see each other to have better discussions, I think. So, you know, getting rid of this uppity-ism, yeah, I'll call it.
I've wanted to get rid of this elevation for years. So do you have enough, direction at this point?
So, yes, I have the, direction on the chairs. Are we inclined to approve CTI? That was my recommendation. That's what I'm not clear on, because we're talking about the lead times and ordering equipment. Are we comfortable going forward with that with the cameras? Or would we like to hold off on that?
I think go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree.
Audience, the web in doing our meetings and that direction. Better we can make it easier for them by who and what all makes sense. So yeah, the CTI plan seems to be the best one. Wireless format, I have no reason not to go with that.
That I would like a motion on. Okay.
Oh, well, I
I can make a motion too, that we,
make a motion that we, proceed with CTI, and, they've laid out here wireless option instead of the wired, and not the actual physical.
second that?
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion. On to ordinances and resolutions. Resolution 2022-06, adopting updated comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, Corp. Questions about this?
I had one question. In the document, there's a timeline? Okay, I just didn't know, like, does this need to get rewritten for the timeline or what? So, the timeline that's on, it says, like, Village Board authorized project March 16th, 2020, so.
Okay.
Right, so, like, you know,
Yep, right
the
there.
week after the pandemic started, we decided that this was.
Then there was a delay on the engineering firm that did it. They had it for quite a while, then they sent it to us, and we had it for a while, and sent it back to them, and it was kind of back and forth. We just finished it, like, maybe 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago? So we're at November 15th. We're at the November 15th. Final corp approved by Village Board.
Yep.
Okay. We'll make a motion to approve resolution 2022-06.
Any other discussion?
Yes. So this is really not a plan, this is a proposal where dates are not hard and fast, the dollars are not hard and fast. I want to make sure about that.
Other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Reports, March financial reports. Questions? Lake minutes from 3/16, any questions? With Lake special meeting on 3/29. Questions about the CDA minutes from 3/28? Make a motion to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1985 1E for the purpose of conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Development agreement.
I'll second that.
President Seeger,
Yes.
Trustee Alexander,
Yes.
Trustee Nugent,
Yes.
Trustee Johnson, Trustee Renucci,
Yes.
Trustee Smalley, Trustee Wisniewski.